I no longer saw the reason to stay. I submitted my resignation as a full-time volunteer worker for the second time. But Apollo Carrion Quiboloy refused it again. A week later, on September 30, 1999, I decided to leave without asking for permission, determined to free myself from his control. It was only when I left out of the group that I finally clearly understood that the man I had believed to be God's chosen and holy was an impostor, oppressor, and deceiver. He manipulated me using his authority and power as God's anointed. I thank God that he took me out from his bondage, from that ambiguous feeling of fear mingled with so much love and loyalty to my Redeemer, Jesus Christ. But he was not finished with me and did not stop terrorizing me. Alex Camia, his personal bodyguard, a full-time worker, once known to be a champion in gun shooting before he joined the group of ACQ, together with his team, kept coming to my place to harass me, serving a fake warrant of arrest to a minister who stayed in my house. This minister settled in my place after he was gunned down in Davao City but survived. The team of Alice Camia was apprehended, and when investigated, they had several firearms in the car, several plate numbers, and there was also a red plate. The registered owner of the car was Apollo C. Quiboloy. Because of their failure to serve the warrant of arrest, they blamed me for hiding the minister and filed cases against me of obstructing justice and grave misconduct and an act unbecoming a public official. After that incident, I heard that Alex Camia was the suspect of the murder of an ex-worker who was shot down inside his home, and this ex-worker did not survive. I was scared to death when I heard this news. My option was to remain silent because killing could have actually happened when Camia and his group came to my place. There was also an ex-worker, Elsa Bolivar, who was a senior citizen, a woman shot dead while she was in her garden in Tagum City. I was so hysterical when pictures of her bullet-ridden body were sent to me because she had just visited me in my place before it happened. Fear consumed me and I remained silent. 3 years ago, nagkausap po kami ni Alex Camia. Humingi po siya ng kapatawaran at nagsabi na siya ay nautusan lang po na kailangan din akong iligpit. Pinaniwala po siya na ako ay may malaking kasalanan at ako ay napakasamang babae. Nang tinanong ko kung ano ang aking kasalanan, sinabihan daw siya na tinukso ko raw si Apollo Carrion Quiboloy. Nakiapi daw ako sa mga ministro. Narinig naman po ninyo yung sa video. Nakipagtalik daw ako mismo doon sa workers' house at nagnakaw daw ako ng 3 million pesos. He even said in Bisaya, di ba nagtugot man ang Ginoo pagpatay sa dautan? Doesn't God permit the killing of the wicked? Doon ko lang naintindihan na kailangang i-declare ni Apollo Quiboloy sa lahat ng mga workers at members na ako'y makasalanan at napakasamang babae para magiging makatwiran ang lahat ng parusa na binigay sa akin at magiging makatwiran din kung bakit ako kailangang patayin. Apollo Quiboloy called me Jezebel, the temptress, using his pulpit to broadcast how filthy and evil I was. This became a pattern. Kung may mga workers na may alam sa kanyang buhay, sa sikretong buhay at aalis sa kanyang kingdom, sila ay akusahan na napakaraming kasalanan. He would always exaggerate their weaknesses at ipaniwala sa mga workers at members na sila ay umalis dahil may mga marumi at mga napakasamang mga tao. His followers only heard his side of the story, which was always filled with lies and twisted truths. The other side, our side, excuse me, was never heard and was never allowed to be heard. They only believed whatever he fed them and even defended him and attacked those who defied their leader without investigating the truthfulness of the circumstances. Nakita naman po siguro natin kung paano siniraan ng mga workers at defenders ni Apollo Quiboloy ang mga testigo dito. Mga napakasamang descriptions para lang ipahiya ang mga nagsalita ng kanilang mga karanasan sa loob ng kanilang kingdom. Mga salitang hindi nababagay sa mga tinatawag na mga citizen ng kingdom of Jesus Christ. Their intention is only to demoralize and warn others of the consequences of defiance. Last August 2021, during one of his television programs, he once again maligned me, broadcasting nationally and internationally that I was a fornicator and an immoral woman, which we have just watched. Madam Chair, I would like to remind Mr. Quiboloy to remember the biblical stories about the lives of King Nebuchadnezzar, King Sennacherib, and King Herod. All of them fell into the hands of the Lord. Nebuchadnezzar, you know that, was separated from his people and lived like a beast and ate grass for 7 years. King Sennacherib died a tragic death, murdered by his own sons. King Herod was struck by the angel of God, died, and his body was eaten by worms. Their sin was that they replaced God with themselves, considering themselves as gods and blaspheming the one true God. This is all, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Salamat po, Ms. Teresita, sa testimonya mo. Kahit kailangan mong iyakan para basahin sa amin. Bago yung isa munang follow-up question ko sa inyo, gusto kong i-acknowledge yung presensya online ni Senator Cynthia Villar. Salamat, Senator Cynthia, sa pagdalo nyo. At ang Minority Leader, Senator Coco Pimentel. Salamat kaayo sa pagdalo. Kung walang opening statement si Senator Coco at si Senator Cynthia, bago yung interjection ni Majority Leader sa Department of Justice, isang mabilis na follow-up question sa ngayon, Ms. Teresita o Ms. Ging, Ate Ging, just for the record, guilty ba kayo dun sa mga krimen na inakusa sa inyo, yung pagnakaw ng 3 million pesos, yung pag-fornicate sa iba pang mga ministro? Guilty ba kayo sa mga iyon?
Of course not.
All right. Salamat kaayo. Majority Leader, for your interjection with the
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nothing to do with the previous testimony. Magpapaalam po kasi ako kasi magsasalita po ako sa Liga ng mga Barangay and the Minority Leader is already here to fill up some legal questions likewise. But Madam Chair, before I leave, gusto ko lang tanungin ang hindi ko kasi nakita kanina, dito pala ang Department of Justice relative to my previous questions answered by the DFA. This is speculative, academic, and purely legal. If, wherever, if an extradition request is lodged before the DFA, there is under the PD, which I cited before, a process which would necessitate the Department of Justice to file a petition. But that is another court. And that is another court which would constitute as the extradition court here in the Philippines. And if there is going to be an extradition hearing, the purpose is not to determine the guilt or innocence of the accused, but whether they would fall under the ambit of our extradition treaty. Is that correct? Who will answer? Attorney Torrevillas or Attorney Quintana? Speculative lang ito. Ano lang to?
Senior State Counsel Quintana, I believe, Majority Leader.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, sir. Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, Your Honor. As to the as to what will happen on, should the Department of Foreign Affairs later on receive a request for the extradition of Mr. Quiboloy and the present criminal cases are filed against him, the Philippines, as a requested state under the Philippines-US extradition treaty, has the option to postpone the filing of the extradition case, in which case,
Postpone.
only the filing, Your Honor.
But is the extradition court would be constituted here in the Philippines?
Yes, Your Honor.
Not necessarily the court where the hearing is being
Yes,
conducted.
it would be a separate separate proceeding, and as I mentioned, it might be postponed, or we can accept the request and file the case in a separate extradition
It
case.
will not be a criminal court.
No, Your Honor. As you correctly pointed out earlier, the extradition court is not there to determine the guilt or innocence of the subject of the request.
Thank you, attorney. But my second question is related to the first question and to the previous questions. The extradition shall not be granted under Article 4 when the person sought has been tried, convicted, or acquitted. Tama po ba yun? So pag may pending case na rito at mabilis yung proseso, conviction or acquittal, hindi na siya pwedeng i-extradite. Is that correct?
Your Honor, under Article 4, that may be a ground for refusal of the request for extradition, but that in that case, so Your Honor, ang ano po dun parang in effect parang double jeopardy. But in this instance po, there is no double jeopardy kasi po yung
Saying double jeopardy. One of the grounds for refusal would be when there has been a trial, conviction, or acquittal that's explicitly stated under Article 4 prior prosecution. Double jeopardy will not apply because of the concept of dual sovereignty. Am I correct?
yes, Your Honor.
So, ang tanong ko, mas makakabuti ba na mas mabilis ang trial sa Pasig, which would result in either conviction or acquittal, dahil hindi na pwedeng ma-extradite?
Sir, it's independent of the request for extradition. So regardless if the criminal cases are terminated, are expedited, it will not affect the extradition request.
Siguro, aralin niyo mabuti itong Section 1 ng Article 4. Parang very explicit naman ito. You still have time. Number 3 question, I learned that correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm sure you're following this through news accounts, that the Department of Justice of the United States dismissed the charges against a certain Miss Dueñas. Tama po ba yun?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, and this was just a few weeks ago.
Last week, Your Honor.
Last week.
October 7.
So, ang tanong ko rito, and this will probably be a lingering question, what would be the effect of the dismissal of the U.S. cases against, is Dueñas a miss or a male? Ano ba yan?
He.
Female? She? Female. What would be the effect of the dismissal of the U.S. cases against Ms. Dueñas to the pending cases of Pastor Quiboloy in the Philippines, since some of the elements would be the same?
Your Honor, if I may defer to Prosecutor Torrevillas.
Torrevillas.
Deputy State Prosecutor Torrevillas, please.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, Senator Tolentino. It will not affect the cases pending against Pastor Quiboloy, considering that Ms. Dueñas is not one of the accused in those cases.
One of the accused in cases pending before the Regional Trial Court here in Pasig or in the United States Department of Justice? Saan po? Saan jurisdiction?
Before the Regional Trial Court of Pasig and Quezon City, Mr. Senator.
So it won't affect.
Yes.
But there is an interrelationship between the elements involved in the U.S. cases and the Philippine cases. Tama po ba yan? And probably I'm not jumping the gun on what the defense counsels were doing. So walang effect. As I've said, this is just speculative.
It will not affect the cases pending before the Regional Trial Court of Quezon City and the Regional Trial Court of Pasig because Ms. Dueñas is not one of the accused, neither she one of the witnesses for the prosecution.
But some of the defendants in the case pending before the U.S. Department of Justice are likewise defendants, are accused here in the Philippines. And I understand there would be a second hearing come May 20 before the U.S. Department of Justice. Tama po ba yan?
I am not aware of that.
Okay. So paano naman kung yun ang magkaroon ng ibang desisyon while pending dito sa Pasig and Quezon City ibang kaso? Any speculative answer? O kung wala, mahirap na
It
siguro.
has no connection at all
Connection
because,
at all.
opo.
Different jurisdictions, different elements. Again, Madam Chair, maraming salamat po sa pagbibigay sa akin ng pagkakataong makapagsalita. I reiterate again my earlier statements that respect and dignity should permeate the entire proceedings today. And I hope that the dignity of the Senate through this committee will be enshrined, Madam Chair. Maraming salamat po sa pagkakataong ito at maraming salamat sa mga resource persons natin na dumalo. Magandang umaga po sa inyo lahat. Daghang salamat.
Maraming salamat din po, Majority Leader, and of course, the Chair and the whole committee ay nakikiisa dun sa patuloy na pagtaguyod ng respeto at dignidad ng Senado at ng Senado para sa lahat ng lumalahok dito sa ating mga pagdinig.